data centers. And that's the other new cool kid class. Lithium's kind of just the guy on the basketball team now.
Right.
Now, so you know,
Right.
it's data centers are the new cool thing, and equally as complex, and to a certain extent equally as unknown from a land and legal standpoint. Um, what are you seeing? I mean, how, from a lawyer's perspective, what are some of the things that you're finding yourself involved in the data center space that has you having to kind of go back to the books, right? And help your clients dig out of some of the issues they have, or answer questions they have, or shape regulatory framework, because I know
Mhm.
you're involved in a lot of that as well.
Absolutely. It's the Wild West, Brent. So think back to basic oil and gas 101. In every industry we've had in the state of Texas so far that's kind of taken off and been oil and gas adjacent, like lithium or solar or wind or things like that, we had developers that, for the most part, were somewhat familiar with the state of Texas. So much of the money in data centers that's coming into the state of Texas now is East Coast traditional private equity or family office that's never really had an energy focused type of fund. From the legal standpoint, the call that I get frequently is the traditional entity that um, has focused on real estate development in other parts of Texas, particularly industrial, or excuse me, other parts of the United States, particularly industrial. And that skill set translates over to data center development. And they may have a property under contract. They may be, in the middle of some of their regulatory due diligence, but they're starting some of their land due diligence. And I have my first conversation with them about, hey, have you done an MOR? And they're like, what's an MOR? And I'm like, well, have you thought about who owns the mineral estate at all? And they're like, no. Have you talked to a
Yeah.
landman? And they're like, what's
Yeah.
a landman? And you're like, oh no, this
It's
is
like, I got a title commitment.
yeah, they're permitted encumbrances. And I'm like, not to your help.
Yeah.
Um,
And no, actually, it's on the exceptions part that nobody
yeah,
reads.
yeah, that's exactly right.
So, Reagan, we talked about the mineral estate and the dominant mineral estate and some of the challenges with people entering in the data center game, uh, really not being aware of the accommodation work that needs to happen there. Uh, One of the other big things is water, and that's kind of something that wasn't a big item originally when a lot of this development started, because there's East Coast, there's ample water supply, it's not an issue. Well, Texas is a different thing. I mean, we're in a 15-year drought, 20-year drought, some would say. Um, Water procurement and water rights and access to water is a big deal. What are you starting to see there? What are some of the guidance that you give to clients on that front?
The water piece of it was indeed an afterthought. And when we first started seeing water becoming a big deal was when developers were coming back to landowners who, rightfully so, as Texas multi-generational landowners, had reserved water rights in their purchase and sale agreement when they had sold the surface. And some of these data centers came back. And I think the misconception from data center developers in Texas was that some of these rural water providers were going to be able to provide commercial sources of water to me. Little do they know, most of those rural water providers would rather let go of parts of their, what we call their CCN, their certificate of convenience and necessity for a water district, then build out to provide massive amounts of water to a data center. So then they would go privately develop some of this water outside the jurisdiction of like a rural water provider. And then they realized,
Mhm.
oh, shoot, I don't have the right to do it. So they had to come back and renegotiate
Yeah.
water rights. Now, I think when you get closer to metropolitan areas, you're not going to see that problem, which I think has been a pretty salient step in what we've seen on the data center development side. Is you saw rural data center development at the beginning pretty frequently. And now you're seeing it kind of encroach closer to what I would call urban or semi-urban areas, where urban
Urban
adjacent,
adjacent.
that's a great way to describe it. And I think part of the driver of that is water development. I think they want to be close to these rural water developers who have seen the blow up around Dallas Fort Worth and have had these big giant build outs to different neighborhoods, and they will be able to service the water needs of a data center. But it is a giant amount of water that they demand on an annual basis.
And it is, and it's you know, when you sit back and look at a map, and we all see the, you know, the publicity on it, where the big hyperscaler locations will tend to be more Northeast Texas, you know, North Louisiana, North Mississippi, or so, you know, parts of they're rural in the sense, but they're also ample supply of water, ample supply of land, not the competing interests from an oil and gas standpoint that you have in West Texas and places like that. So it's kind of a natural evolution. Um, some of the challenges that we see, and frankly, most of our clients, it's astonishing. You know, over the last 2 years, some of the work that we've done in data center development, we get brought in to help with these projects. Maybe they, to your point, they've got a contract on a piece of land and they've got this grand plan. Um, but then it's like, well, what about the other 20 things that you're going to need? You know, powered land is the big thing, right? So we see in this marrying of natural gas. Um, we're seeing marrying of data center developers with midstream operators where they're purchasing natural gas to power their sites. The marrying of battery storage development, the marrying of, you know, a clean data center development where you've got some CCS, you know, component to it. And it all kind of goes to, you know, the financial viability of it. You know, can I get some tax credits here? Can I get a tax abatement from the county there? Can I get a site that has access to water? Do I have access to powered lands? Do I have an agreement with a natural gas producer? Can I do some CCS? Can I do a class 2 weld, or I got to do a class 6, you know, full on type project? Um, all of those components, kind of to what I alluded to earlier in our conversation, require some sort of land work. You've got to buy right of way. You've got to secure lands. You've got to get interconnection into the grid, which is a whole other, you know, conversation and expense. You've got to get a title policy. You've got to handle the mineral estate. All those things require a lot of land work, and they require a lot of things to align. So that's what we're starting to see. You see a lot of people in the space that are grabbing up a piece of land that's next to a big power line and think they've got gold. The real multiples are coming, and I'd love to hear what you're seeing. And that's this side is when you've got these sites that are de-risked further down the pipeline. You know, and you've checked off 10 boxes of the 20 or 15 of the 20, and you have a plan for the last 5. That's when you really see in those crazy purchase prices for a site. What are you seeing on your end? Is that kind of aligning with what you're seeing from a legal standpoint?
Absolutely.
At the
I'll
firm?
take the price question first. When we first started getting data center development work years ago, whether it was on the developer side or the landowner side, those numbers made you blush, but it was with zero horizontal improvements. I mean, it was just a raw tract of land near a substation in an area with a power provider that wasn't too difficult to work with. And that's what we saw at the beginning. Then we started to see some of what I don't necessarily want to describe them as flippers, because I think in our industry, sometimes that gets a negative connotation, whether it should be or not. But in the power space, we've seen folks come in that said, all right, I'll go acquire the land. I'll go do what I describe as horizontal improvements. I'll go get it platted. I'll go talk to the water regulatory authority and get some kind of tie-in. I'll go negotiate an interconnection agreement. I'll go apply for power in the queue, which pause there. I saw a stat 2 weeks ago from one of my partners who is an electric regulatory lawyer in Austin, who is doing almost 100% data center work at the moment. We have 200 megs sitting in the queue for ERCOT of requested power right now over the next few years. We have 66 available. 60,
Yeah.
gigawatts. 200 gigs of requested power. We have 66 available. How we
Yeah.
are going to meet that power demand, I do not know. Do you know the only
Yeah.
way we can meet that power demand, outside of building more giant power lines? Like, I don't know if you guys saw the application earlier this week. On Monday, AEP, which comes out of West Texas, and CPS, which is the power provider here in San Antonio, filed for a 350-mile line that's 765 kVs. That is a
Yeah.
big old giant power line.
It's huge.
It is
It's
wild.
huge. There are a few of those. There's some in construction. There are others planned. Others permitted. It's and the thing is those projects take a lot of time, right? That's not a quick deal. Take a lot of time and money. And you were talking about things that landmen are going to do in the next 20 years. A lot of oil and gas landmen, or maybe even more so, new people in our
Right.
industry better have a utility background and better get aligned with those types of opportunities. Right of way agents aren't going to be taken over from
Right.
AI,
Right.
right? There's going to be a lot of opportunity there in the land and legal community to build out that infrastructure. But you're exactly right. If we've got all this opportunity, all this incentive, all this demand, not enough
That's
power to
right.
feed it.